Would he not take her for the newness of the experience? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And the world needs a hermit in the middle of the woods as much as a preacher in a pulpit. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Train Dreams.
Could you read your quote again in the sort of Will Patton voiceover style?
Oh, you want me to do it like the movie would?
Yeah.
Well, so this wasn't voiceover. He actually said this to his friend. In the movie,
No,
but
I'm just saying.
I'll read. Would he not take her for the newness of the experience?
The world needs a hermit in the middle of the woods as much as a preacher in a pulpit.
I think what I've learned here is we're bad at that.
Yeah, I know. And Will Patton is much better at this, and we are not. So that's why we're here to talk about the movie instead of the voiceover, instead of just reading you the voiceover from this point of view.
No, we're just going to read you the script. I hope you're ready for our dramatic reading of this fine cinematic piece.
You know that compliment? You know, you could make the phone book sound interesting. Not us.
I don't know. I bet you we could make the phone book sound interesting.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't have
Do it right now.
When's the last time you had a phone book?
I have a phone book on my phone, but it is of all of my contacts.
Yeah, that doesn't count, dude.
Well, one of those contacts would be onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, which you could email us in if you wanted to write us a message telling us how bad we are at voiceover and assorted other conversational pieces.
We're just bad at doing that specific thing that this movie did. That's all. We're good at so much other stuff, like swimming.
Yes.
And video games.
Sure.
Other sports. Sports specifically for me.
That's if you combine us into one person.
Right. We're so good at stuff.
All right. So if you
drinking.
Yeah. Seltzer water. Listen.
Yeah. We're getting fucked up for this Train Dreams review. Woo!
Oh, okay. We need to tone it down a moment here. I'm going to pull out a YouTube comment we got this week from Camera God, who also goes by the name of Steven. Who also messaged me just this evening as I was coming over here to let me know that we were his number one podcast on Spotify.
Yay!
Unwrapped this week. If you have, actually, funnily enough, the only podcast about movies was also my number one spot.
Really?
Because I do listen to it back. If I need to go back through old episodes.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
I listen to how many other this is actually an interesting question. How many other podcasts do you listen to on the regular, like weekly?
Oh, quite a few. Yeah. Hang on, I can pull up what was my number one podcast. I know like The Daily would be one of those. Hang on, let me pull it up right now.
I think mine is even more news.
Yeah, it would be The Daily, The Ezra Klein Show. What else we got here? The Radio Lab, This American Life. I know there's probably, you know what I really want to listen to is Jad Abumrad from Radio Lab has got a new podcast about Fela Kuti, which is the New Yorker is called the number one podcast of the year. And I love Fela Kuti. I've just started listening to him just recently. So I'm very keen. And Jad Abumrad is a genius. In fact, he was awarded the MacArthur Genius Fellowship. So, he's legitimately a genius.
Yeah, it's on the plaque now.
Yeah. So that's one I have not listened to, but I would listen to. I started listening to. There was a new series on Serial recently, about a doctor in a small town in America, and I binged 3 episodes of that. But that's kind of I circle around. Things like The Daily, Ezra Klein Show. There's a lot of New York Times stuff in my rotation.
Yeah. I listen to the Action Boys every once in a while. I also listen to Last Podcast on the Left, specifically either that thing on their network, on the LPN network, or Page 7.
Yeah. Do you listen to any other movie podcasts when you're doing any prep work for this, or just generally?
No, not really. I mean, we are the only one. Okay. I listen to a few. I listen to Movie Struck from time to time, Sophia's podcast. Yeah. I listen to Screen Drafts. Basically, if you invite me on your podcast, I listen to your podcast afterwards. So that's really. Email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com to invite us on your podcast.
If you're looking for that one additional listener.
If you're listening for that one additional listener.
Yeah.
And a shout out on a breakfast talk show about video games.
Yeah. I do listen to the Big Picture, which I really enjoy. It's been a little while since I've listened to Slash Film and Blank Check podcast. But yeah, I circle around.
You dabble.
I dabble. I definitely, yeah. There, what's hard is that as you move out, when I was purely editor, like in post-production, not editor, but when I was in motion graphics design, there's much more opportunity to listen to podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Editor, there's not much
not
opportunity
at all
to listen to podcast. Director, much less opportunity. And now as a business owner, producer, it is actually really hard to because I'm often like jumping between calls. And
it's only travel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's walking the dog or going somewhere.
That's where I'm riding the bike.
Yeah.
All right, we should move on from our podcast.
No, this is the only podcast about podcasts now.
Camera God writes about our Wicked for Good review last week. I disliked the book so much that I couldn't bring myself to watch either movie.
Damn.
I understand that they changed a lot of it for the movie, but no thanks. Probably didn't help that I just read Philip Jose Farmer's book, Barnstormer in Oz, which is a way better book. And I wanted to say thanks, Stephen, for letting us know. I forgotten that there is a lot of Oz-related material.
Oh, yes, very much.
Oz-adjacent material that I am not aware of.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Stephen. Also, if you would like to be like Stephen and be super cool, please send us messages, comments over on the YouTube machine. We have a YouTube channel. We're going to keep telling you it until we hit 200 subscribers.
Until morale improves.
And then, oh boy, you just buckle up. There's big things coming.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
I can't say how, because they're so big. You know when something's so big in front of you, it doesn't look like anything at all?
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Could you tell us, it's an interesting thing with Train Dreams. This played at Sundance when I was there, but I didn't get to go see it. And this has been ceremoniously released on Netflix without much fanfare. But Netflix has a lot of content. I was looking at the other day. There's Catherine Bigelow's film, A Fistful, House of Dynamite, and Richard Linklater's film, Nouvelle Vague. And I was like, wow, this is a lot of great content here. And also they've got Noah Baumbach's film coming out in about a week's time, Jay Kelly, with George Clooney and Adam Sandler. To boot. And these are all movies that are, Nouvelle Vague probably less so, but House of Dynamite and Jay Kelly certainly. Movies that are garnering awards attention, that seem to be doing really well in terms of the critical reception that they're receiving. But also Netflix has Stranger Things, and Squid Game season 3 and that sort of thing as well. So it's hard for them. I can appreciate that it's hard for them to like promote everything and to see what sticks. Like a Wednesday is going to stick. Yeah, a lot more than Richard Linklater's love letter to the French New Wave.
Well, series by their very nature stick longer than a film will on a streaming service. I mean, that's just it's release and amount of hours you have of a thing to be able to talk about. Also, I think they're doing an abysmal job, at least currently. Maybe next week will be the time when they start advertising Wake Up Dead Man.
Yeah, Wake Up Dead Man's coming up as well.
So it's like I really am. I'm not confused. I think we're in the Stranger Things sort of push right now for part 1 of season 5. I don't know. Do you watch Stranger Things at all?
You know what? I have watched season 1 and I thought it was excellent. I just didn't keep up with it really.
Yeah.
I it was one of those things because it's like available so easily. I'm like, yeah, I'll catch up with that at some point.
I've enjoyed every season and this one's fine. But I will say it is stretching credulity that the kids are supposed to still be kids when like Steve is like in real life 35.
Oh, are they? How old?
One of the older teenagers is old as hell.
Okay.
Anyway, it's fine.
I have friends who've worked on Stranger Things for the last couple of years, and it is a massive, massive show. Even compared to some of the big shows that they actually work on. So more. I'm eager to check it out at some point. I really just have not fallen into that trap. But it's the same for Squid Games, which I thought was superb. And I watched the first season. Binged the entire thing and was completely hooked on it for a few days. And then, when season 2 came out, I was like, oh, cool. I will watch that at some point.
Yeah. I felt, and I've not watched season 2. I loved season 1. It's one of those things where I'm like, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Like I love season 1. I don't think, I don't know. I just don't.
Season 1 does, the odd thing is season 1 does hang on end on a cliffhanger, but I was like, I just wasn't compelled to kind of keep going. I maybe, and one day I will, but I was excited to see Train Dreams for a couple of reasons.
You love trains.
I do love trains.
Oh, we should have got, oh man.
What?
We should have got Sam from Wendover on this episode. He loves trains.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
This isn't really about trains.
The trains appear only in dream form in this film. No, there are a few trains actually in there, but it doesn't seem to be the foremost part of the story.
More building the tracks.
We've talked a little bit about Joel Edgerton on this show before. He made one of my favorite films of our first top 10 that we ever did, The Gift, movie I absolutely adore. Also starred in another film that I absolutely adore, Animal Kingdom, which is a David Michaud film. And he's part of this collective of filmmakers in Australia called Blue Tongue Films. I had the very unfortunate privilege of having one of my films play alongside one of their films at a film festival. And I actually tweeted about this, and they responded about it. But Nash Edgerton, who is Joel's younger brother, is a fantastic filmmaker and director. I think the last feature film he did was a film called Gringo, which had Joel in it. And one of my films played alongside Nash's film Spider. And my film, this is one of my early films that, it's fine. It did really well for me, but I look at it kind of with sort of cringy now. Not cringy, just like, I don't think I hold it up in high esteem in terms of things I could have done with it.
I think Skulls Across New York, my film, holds up pristine.
Really? Everything you've done is the best thing I've done?
No, everything I've done is exactly what I did. I think I know what it is.
Yeah. I know what you did.
I know what it is.
Yeah. But Spider, one of their movies, was just phenomenal, and it was difficult to watch, but in terms of like right up alongside mine. But there's phenomenal filmmakers. There's another film of theirs, The Square, which people have really raved about. I watched a film of theirs this week, just kind of in preparation for this, called The Stranger, which, I had heard a lot of great things about, but didn't really quite capture me. And it kind of felt in some way a little bit closer to the playbook of what a Blue Tongue film is, which is that they are quiet, contemplative, like really about dark subject matter told with kind of like a sense of brooding that is palpable, and it makes the Australian outback look like the scariest place on earth.
Isn't it though?
Possibly not in the way that these movies make them out to be. But again, I think Joel Nash, David Michaud, and everyone at Blue Tongue Films is quite extraordinary. And
does Australia have swamps?
Probably, but more known for its desert outback land.
I know. There's a section in Elden Ring that's a swamp called Caelid, and it's what I imagine Australia would be if Australia was a swamp.
I think if we go back and watch the seminal Australian film Crocodile Dundee Part 1, not Crocodile Dundee in New York. No, he does go to New York in the first one.
Does he?
But I believe there's a swampland in the first movie from memory. Paul Hogan, of course, being the absolute pinnacle of representation from Australia.
Of course.
Forgetting people like Guy Pearce, Chris Hemsworth, Nicole Kidman, Tony Collette, all those people.
I don't even know who those people are.
Jeffrey Rush.
What? Who?
George Miller. Like all of these famous luminaries from Australia. But now we have Joel Edgerton to add to the list. Both a director and a writer and a filmmaker that I'm always excited to see, and was thrilled to see this movie. Now, this is also directed by Greg Quaidar. This is co-written. Yeah, this is co-written by Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley. I got those two confused because Greg Quaidar directed the last Clint Bentley written film, which we have reviewed on this podcast, Sing Sing, which was excellent. I also, in preparation for this, watched their first movie, which Greg directed, Transpecos, which is excellent. So I found myself kind of falling into this rabbit hole of like who these filmmakers are and what they're all about, what their systems of production are, and what are they into.
Did you seize the means of production, Jer?
I did seize the means of production because I am the proletariat thief. And I also did I mention I read the book?
You did maybe before the show or maybe during the show.
It's a very brisk 100 pages novella, but I kind of was like, look, I'm just going to read this. And I actually, after watching the movie, decided to read the book and found that I'd gotten through like 60 pages of it before I even knew it, and then finished it in like a day. So I fell really far down this rabbit hole and was excited to talk about it with you because this movie brought up a lot of feelings in me, a lot of fears, anxieties. This movie kind of inhabits a lot of the things that I'm interested in, both as a filmmaker and just as a film goer. This movie really spoke to me on a lot of levels, both as a example of sort of the kind of Malickian naturalism that I really love, and I think that the movie has been accused of being a little bit fond of.
What is that word you used?
Malickian. So Terrence Malick.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, Matt. This is a movie I suggested. Had you known much about it before we kind of jumped in? Or?
I saw one trailer for it that made it seem very strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, it didn't really sell me on. I mean, the trailer looked gorgeous.
Yeah.
This entire film is probably one of, if not the best looking film of the year. Like it's just every shot you're like even the most mundane shit, you're like, dear God, the beauty.
Yeah.
The
agony of the beauty.
The agony of the beauty. So no, I didn't know terribly too much going in, but it kind of lulls you into what it's doing in the first few minutes, I feel like. And then you're just sort of along the ride. You're gently gliding along the tracks and looking at all of the life and the loss and the love and then the leaving, all the L words. I think I really did enjoy this movie. I was having a hard time sort of nailing down. Okay, this is the dumb version of what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Of nailing down the point.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that I didn't love the journey and sort of where the film takes us, as we're watching Joel Edgerton's Robert Grainer, have his life basically from when he was a child into spoilers for the end of the movie. It's his whole life. So you see when that life ends.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating look at this time period. I believe it takes place in 1917. Which
it
railroad?
ends? I think it ends there.
It
no.
ends
It ends in the 60s.
It's the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, it ends in the 60s.
Yeah.
Spokane International Railroad.
Yeah, so it begins at the turn of the century, like 1800s, late 1800s.
So the we've done a lot on Extra History about a lot of different episodes about railroad things. And this time period of essentially connecting the pieces of the country together is I've always had a soft spot in it. I do not like Westerns. I would not call this movie a Western, even though it is it takes place in a time when some Westerns do. But if this was a Western, this is my favorite time period for Westerns to take part in. It's where Red Dead Redemption 2 takes place. It's where when there is still untamed wilderness, but it is being surrounded by society.
Right.
And I think the story of railroad workers is such an interesting one, because they are transient and they go where the work is, and the work is always moving either closer or away from them. And there's a lot of other sort of historical subtext that I really enjoyed seeing in this movie. This movie is a deeply cared for portrait of a man's life who lived in this, or not a real one, but like a representation of a man who would have lived in this time. And I thought it was absolutely gorgeous, and I loved every minute of it. And then I was like, I wonder if the journey is the point, because I was having a hard time, like afterward. I didn't have like a sort of a final moment of catharsis or a wrap up element where I felt like, yes, it was the friends we made along the way. And again, not that you need something like that, but this movie I felt like was leading me there.
Yeah.
And then it just is like, all right, this is your stop. And you're like, what? Okay, thanks, movie. Like, again, not bad at all. It was wonderful, brilliant even. But when it was over, I was just like, huh. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of diving a little bit more into it, because maybe I can understand where my brain went with that. I mean, you've been saying that you've loved it very much. Yeah,
I did love it a lot. And I think I was interested to look at the source material, just in relation to this film, because there was a quality to it I noticed as I watched the movie that sort of struck me as interesting in the sort of theory of adaptation. We did an episode at PAX East this year about video game movie adaptations.
Minecraft and Until Dawn,
which we have done several times over. You
want to do it again?
Yeah, right now?
No, I mean this year. We're submitting soon.
Oh, sure. We can milk that topic for as much as
it's the best,
as much as it's worth. I still have a ongoing theory that there are interesting movies that are not connected to video games but share video games aesthetic.
Oh, there are.
That we could talk about. Children of Men is one of them. Regardless, the thing that I think was fascinating from an adaptation point of view was looking at the way Robert Grainer,
yep.
Is a representation more of a 21st century man, or a person of today, than he feels like from the period that this film takes place in.
Wait, so the book felt like that?
I think the movie felt like that. The movie felt like he was a very, in fact, it kind of gave him a kind of bewilderment at the world more than actually, like things were just happening to him. And there's an interesting
That's kind of what life is, though, isn't it?
Yes, but I think part of the interesting idea of looking at historical texts or even fictional historical texts is to place people's awfulness within the context of the time that they came out of. And this person does not seem like he's an awful man. He seems like a very nice and genuine man. And one of the big changes from the book, for example, and I'm sort of couching this in that conversation that we had about video game adaptations. It was a text that I brought up there, Linda Hutchinson's book, A Theory of Adaptation, where I talked about this idea of the palimpsest. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So the palimpsest is a sort of artifact of the written language where you would there would be a written manuscript, you would erase the manuscript, then rewrite over the top of it. And Hutchins likes this idea that adaptation is sort of metaphorically like a palimpsest, where the psychic echoes of the original text are within the replaced text, and they become, it builds on top of each other, but they are different artifacts, that share the same space. And so there was an interesting thing about the way the film treated, particularly the racism of the time, and how Grania seems to be entirely divorced from that racism, that I was sort of like I found it to be like a curious sort of little detail. I not to say I didn't like it. I liked the character. And there's a sort of, a few people have noted that this is a distinct change for the way it happens in the book. And this would get into very, specific spoiler stuff. And the other side of this is that, he kind of in the movie becomes this idealistic man of the wilderness who is driven by this one great tragedy that has happened to him, which is, again, slightly different to the book. And I liked it. I did find myself really compelled by it. And I think as a short piece, which is what the film is, feel that it really, really worked and landed on the singular idea. I think for you, that question of like, what is it about? I can tell you what I thought it was about and what I really responded to in the film, which is the idea of the inconsequential man. The idea of the person who leads an unimportant life.
Most of us are.
Yeah, most of us are. And what I really thought that the film was delving into was that though this man may have on the outside seemed to have lived an unimportant life, one that left no consequence, or had very little consequence to the world outside of him, he was very much a part of all things connected. And like the shoe embedded in the tree, a part of the fabric of what this time was, and left a deep imprint, even though his life outwardly was not, seemingly of consequence. And so the final images of a house overgrown by shrubs, and like, who was this person who lived here? Who was this hermit in the woods? The idea I found really beautiful was that he both was a part of the world around him and a part of nature and everything that existed, and felt that way himself, towards the end of his life when he is on board a plane and sort of does a flip turn, and the narration, again, lovingly read by Will Patton, says he felt like he was connected to everything. Was to me a beautiful summation of this idea that though he was a man of no consequence, he was part of everything. And this is an idea that's echoed throughout the film several times over. The Kerry Condon character who comes through and who is the kind of fire watch person who, aboard the tree, says everything is this giant connected system where you don't know where one thing starts and one thing ends. William H. Macy says this beautiful line, which is that though it may not, a man may not realize it, the minute he takes an axe to that tree, he is in a war with that tree. And, it's the outcome of which he will not be aware of for the eternity, for the rest of his life. I found all of that really beautiful and poetic, this idea of like the interrelationship between man and nature. And again, this person, sort of to use the naturalist term, was like one of a million people floating around these woods, and whose body has returned to it. And from the outside, if you're watching in, you would never know the stories of this human being because they were not written about in books. And that's what I really took away from the film. And what really, really, made me respond to the movie. I did that kind of resonate with you.
I think I think, I guess what I would take from the film itself, if I was trying to figure out what the point is, I think you talked about it in a very eloquent way. I think I would just make a slight addendum, at least for me, is that the inconsequential man is in fact consequential.
Yeah.
Like, and that consequence or that importance is not the same as notoriety or fame or wealth, right? Hell, oftentimes people that get those things also don't deserve them.
As William H. Macy says in the beginning, I've seen a terrible man rise and a great man fall.
Yeah. So I think I really do like that reminder of it. It does feel like, if we're putting it into the context of today, the ability, not to get all political, the ability for lesser consequential people to actually be doing something of consequence seems lessened. Like, if you think about the railroad, and this is, I'm breezing over a million problems with how the railroad was built. It is a group of humans coming together to essentially change the way the entirety of the country would live, or the world, really. And, you know, there's the good things about it, there's the terrible things about it, but it is something. You know what I really liked about it? There's a moment in this movie where they build a bridge for the railroad and they test it, and it's a big deal, and they're all happy about it. And then it cuts to like him in the 60s riding a train above it, and that bridge is there's a highway below him now in the valley or whatever, and like the bridge doesn't matter anymore. It's replaced.
Yeah.
So, but like it's kind of a nice reminder of like nothing any of us do is gonna last in the long term, and I think that's sort of kind of lovely about it. I know I've said it a trillion times on the podcast, but nothing is beautiful because it lasts. Thank you, Vision, talking to Ultron. It's true. And I think this movie is a really great representation of that. It takes mundanity. Is that a word? Modernity? The mundane.
Yeah.
And shows you basically beautifulness in every frame of it. And a lot of it is like the natural landscape, but other times too, like I really liked obviously the family stuff that then does eventually turn to tragedy. But I also really liked the friendship and conversations he has with the Firewatch woman, because it just sort of is another element of his life. He gets to eventually have like a decent amount of rotating friends, which I feel like, who knows how friendships actually worked in 1917. I know we could like read about it and things, but like the day-to-day of it is not like what we do now.
Yeah.
You don't get to talk to everybody all the time. You only have certain moments, like William H. Macy's character, the Arn, is another railroad worker who's aging, and he only gets to see him every once in a while, and they sort of become friends, but then then another guy that they're with like doesn't recognize him until they chat again, and he can't remember things. And it's sort of the impermanence of memory and how we have people coming into our lives that we are very close with, and then all of a sudden we won't be again. I think, it's interesting. The closest I can equate in my life, and maybe you can relate to this too, Shahir, and some people listening who've worked similar gig economy things, is sort of either long-term or short-term sort of television work. Like, it's not the railroad, of course, but you're on a show, and you're on that show until the show ends, and then you're out there again, and you explode back out into the ether, and then maybe you'll work with the same people on another show, just like maybe you'll run into the next guy at the next railroad. And I feel like that is a very sort of jobber-specific type of socialization that I don't know, I can relate to, and is an interesting thing in this time of essentially the industrialization of our country.
And I think the fascinating thing here is that he is part of an economy that does not care for his well-being in the way that the gig economy doesn't care for the well-being of individuals. you can take from it what you will, and that's not to say it's not it's all negative. But he does not gain any permanent foothold in the logging industry by having worked this one job. He is used, comes back for a season, then goes back again. And
he had plans to. It just he had different.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to kind of see how like he attempts at some point, or he and his wife, played by Felicity Jones, attempt to kind of have a sense of like how they can turn their sort of idyllic farm land that they own into something of a working piece of property that they can like invest in over time. Of course, this is met with great tragedy right away. And I got to say as well, you are about to get married.
What?
I am married and have a kid, and the amount of mental effort I spend thinking about how to avoid disaster.
Oh yeah,
is like it occupies a significant part of my brain, and watching him kind of come back to what is the worst possible outcome in this scenario was horrific to watch. Beautifully rendered, beautifully created, beautifully performed, all that sort of stuff. But this idea that he was not there when he needed to be because he's continually going out and taking these jobs because they provide like an economy for a short period of time. It was haunting to me to watch.
Yeah.
And for that reason, which is that I spend a lot of time thinking about like what are the worst case scenarios that are going to happen when I'm not on the ball for whatever reason.
Well, you know what the worst case scenario is right now, Shahir? I didn't read the Internet Movie Database description, and I am sorry.
We just dived in.
I am sorry. But just so we're clear, the Internet Movie Database says that Train Dreams is, quote, based on Dennis Johnson's beloved novella. Train Dreams is the moving portrait of Robert Grenier, a logging and railroad worker who leads a life of unexpected depth and beauty in the rapidly changing America of the early 20th century. That is correct.
Yeah. And so the thing that I wanted to talk about was the difference between the book and the film. And there are subtle changes in that have happened. There are some major omissions from the book. But, this is all. I'm not saying this with like. There's a problem when you talk about the source text. For example, if we were talking about Dune, Dune has this rich history behind every single character, and we could talk about all those things, but. It's interesting to just look at this from a point of view of adaptation, not from the point of view of like what is canon. Sure. Because I think what is interesting is the way in which the story has been adapted to fit who viewers are today. And, one of which is like the very crucial thing that happens at the very beginning of the film, which is the abduction and lynching of a Chinese worker, a railroad worker on the line. And in the, and again, not canon, but in the book, it is implicated that he had more of a helping hand in, throwing that person off the bridge or carrying the legs. And I thought it was a very tasteful way to do it in this film, which is that he picks up the legs, but then drops them immediately. And then that character is thrown off and he is haunted by that character for the rest of the film. I think the implication is interesting in that, for the film, the implication is that he is haunted by the fact that he didn't do more to save that person or didn't do more to like avert the situation. And in the book, it's interesting because he treats it more of like he just happened to be there as this like really horrible thing happened. And even though he, helped pick up the legs of this person, and I mean, in the book, he like literally carries the legs of this person for a little bit of a time. He didn't see himself as enabling it per se as much as he was just there and doing what needed to be done at the time. So I think there's a sort of interesting, fascinating like hero's journey, hero of a film kind of thing that needs to happen in order to adapt that so that it works. And I'm not mad at it. I'm just sort of like it's sort of interesting to know. There's a couple of other really fascinating ones. At the beginning of the film, he's talking about his childhood, and I think this idea that he was basically a sort of parentless child, like he put on a train with a little thing tied to his neck about where he's going to go, and in the book they go into a little bit more details about the life he led, but it wasn't too much. And then there is a detail from the movie that's there, but in much more detail in the book, where he meets that guy who played by Clifton. Clifton Collins, who was in Clint Bentley's other film, Jockey. Clifton Collins, by the way, you got to go back and watch Traffic. Clifton Collins in Traffic is incredible. But Clifton Collins is lying on the ground, and he's like, this person has broken my legs. I'm surely dead, and he gets him some water in the in his shoes. But in the book, it goes into further detail, which is that that character who's lying on the ground reveals to Robert that he sexually molested his niece, I believe. And that got her pregnant, and that her father killed her when he was trying to abort the baby. And, so it's got all this like detail that is like really fascinating because it kind of highlights a little bit more of the cruelty of the time. Now, Dennis Johnston wrote this book in 2002, just might I add as well. So
sure.
He's looking back at it in this way, but like, it's interesting that those sort of like really fascinating details are kind of omitted from the film. And, they're omitted for 1,000 different reasons. Again, the palimpsest, the idea that something is written over and kind of, has a different psychic connection to the original work. But
this is more of an adaptation, right? Like this is probably, there's 80% accurate to the book, or is it just so much little things?
Well, the book, it's a novella. It's like literally 100 pages. You can read it in 1 or 2 hours.
I watched this movie in 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah, there you go. I think there's just what's fascinating is what I think is fascinating is to look at not as an adaptation of each other, as each work is an adaptation of each other, but also in addition to be a reflection of both the time context in which the film was made and also the filmmakers that make it. And that's kind of why I went back and watched Transpecos. I haven't watched Jockey yet, but we talked about Sing Sing on this podcast as well, and sort of looking at the things that interest these filmmakers as writers. And I think between Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley, who have formed this beautiful partnership, they are fascinated by the idea of the tragic figure finding their way back into the light, or finding their way back. And this is, in the case of Sing Sing, it is literally about a prisoner who's finding his way back from doing something terrible, which he does not shy away from. And in the case of this film, it is about a character who begins the film kind of lost and ambling, and then in the middle of the film has one of the sort of greatest tragedies that can happen to an individual happen to him, and then try to wander the rest of his life wondering what is the meaning of all of this.
Yeah.
And so that's the rabbit hole I kind of fell down with this was just thinking about, the consequence of life, because also you and I are both middle-aged men now.
What? My back is perfect.
And I don't know about you, but the thinking about like, what is the meaning of all of this, definitely creeps in a lot more.
Okay.
I thought about that when I was younger, but it has more weight to it now.
Oh God, this is going to sound so terrible.
You don't think about the meaning of all of this?
I don't think about the meaning of all of this.
Okay.
And I think it is I've found the times that I have tried to do that or extrapolate or whatever, it just sort of boxes me in.
Yeah.
Whereas we only got so much time on this little blue marble. And I sort of like the ability to have my life mean whatever I want it to mean.
Sure.
I'm going to pull out all the bullshit pop culture quotes on this episode. If nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do. And that is an Angel quote from the spinoff of Buffy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very that's how I've squared a lot of the circles of my life. Is a lot maybe like Robert here, like in a weird way. I don't know if he starts thinking about like, did the tragedy befall him because he like deserved it for not helping the Chinese man who they murdered. He's trying to find meaning, and then what I liked about it, he doesn't have like an epiphany or something. He has that moment where he's like, I feel like it's all connected, but that's not like I feel like it's all connected, but I'm not like, I'm not questioning sort of the how. And he never really was, outside of his tragedy, questioning the how. Like the how for him was, did this perceived bad thing that I did somehow tip the scales of fate to make this other bad thing happen because he keeps seeing the dead
haunted,
gentleman's face sitting next to him when he's in the woods. And I don't know, I have yet, and maybe when I'm older, I will start questioning the meaning of all of this. But I, you know what it is though? Now we're getting sort of really weird. I just don't actually think there is a meaning to all of this. So like, I'm just sort of like, neat that I'm going to make my own meaning. The meaning is what I make of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think the purpose of the question is to come to a universal meaning like that.
Oh no. But I don't actively like look for the. I guess I've found my point, so I don't think about it anymore. Does that make sense?
You've 42'd your way into
I think so. Yeah. Weirdly enough. Swinging back to the actual nuts and bolts of the movie, though, for a second, I have a question, and it's the one thing that bugged me in the movie. And look, I know that this film is meant to be a soft movement through a life that is not like everything does not have to be explained. It is the entirety of a life in an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes. But now we're into deep spoilers. So when he comes back and there's a giant fire and he tries to get to his place, and his house where his wife and child lived while he was away is burnt to a cinder. I was, and this must have been very, very sort of common for the time period when you couldn't easily call someone or identify where they are. But like, he never found the bodies. And that sort of was kind of confusing to me because it seemed like, at least from what the film showed, the fire wasn't like instant. Like people were leaving. It's not to say people couldn't get trapped or do something else or get lost, but like it felt like everyone else in the movie, and again, no other characters, just humans we see moving about this tragedy, were like kind of on the move. But
they were quite isolated. Like they
were sure, but like I guess I know that the whole crux of this movie is he's waiting to see if they're going to come back. And he even has a moment where he kind of, either you could take it as a hallucination or it actually happened or however you want to do it.
Yeah.
Of his daughter coming back older. But like, I was a little confused about like, well, if they were dead, wouldn't their bodies be in the house? Like, I got kind of stuck on that from a logistics perspective. Everything else in this movie is sort of like you're, for me, I was just like floating on a cloud, moving through, watching this entirety of life. And then this was the one sort of like logistical contrivance that I didn't quite hit.
Do you, if he has a sort of dream about like what may have happened later on in the film.
Yes.
Where they do with the daughter and the mother Gladys leave the house during the fire. So,
but if they're all, this is my point. Yeah. If they are in this house in the deep woods and the fire comes and they don't get killed in the house, they would have gone within a certain mile radius and died of smoke inhalation or heat or whatever and died in the woods.
Yeah.
This man has dedicated his life now to just sort of searching and or waiting for where they were. He would have come across their corpses if they were dead. Like it just from a logistics standpoint, that is. I feel
saying
very
it's 100%. He would have.
I think it's very likely if that was the case.
Right.
So, and again, look. At the same time, this is a very logical outlook, a Monday morning quarterbacking, if you will, of a fictitious man's tragic life.
Yeah.
But there was something about that was the one element of this movie that I felt like they didn't explain because it helps the movie to not explain it.
Yeah.
But I felt like there could have been it was the only like hiccup in an otherwise like silky smooth ride.
So I think I would attribute that, you know, I don't disagree with your logic. It didn't occur to me at all that might be a thing. And the thing that I'm thinking about is my response to Zach Krieger's film Weapons, another film featuring a character by the name of Gladys, where there's a logistical part of that movie, and I won't reveal it for spoilers, but it involves like the logistics of a certain number of people gathered in a certain in a certain place, and whether that would be obvious to anyone nearby. And so I would attribute your response to this to be kind of akin to my response to that, which is that once there is a logical, not an error of logic, but a logical hump that you personally can't get over, it becomes, it can become a challenging thing. For me, the disappearance of their bodies was not something I pondered on. I figured on a fire ranging that large and that devastating, it is entirely possible that there could be bodies out there that will never be found, and or bodies that were consumed by animals and drug away, whatever it may be. And the film's logic, does not hinder upon understanding
but that
that
sort of pulled me. Like I was just like, oh, he's gonna stay here searching for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
I just feel like if you had that amount of time to put into it, you'd find bones.
Okay.
It's not, I think I'm even spending too much time on it.
Yeah.
I was just, whenever we talk about these things, and especially when I really, really like the film, and I think it works very well, I also don't just want to be like, it's awesome. I had no problems with it when I actually have moments where I was like, well, and again, it's not even a problem. It's just something that like the entire ride is so like on casters smooth.
Yeah.
That this is the one piece of sand or whatever in that otherwise incredibly like just gliding ability to witness the portrait of this dude's life.
The kind of like the interesting idea that he felt like a 21st century man, in a 18th century world was I found it interesting and compelling as an idea.
So talk to me about that, because I was a little confused when you brought it up before.
Like he is responsive to his wife's ideas about what they should do in terms of building the house. He's not in any way domineering or anything like that. He is not casually racist to everyone around him. He seems to have this sort of like almost childlike and like he doesn't see the race of people around or the racial issues around him in the way that the film does. And it's interesting that in the book there is a more sort of pointed observance of those sorts of details than in the film. And again,
a pointed observance that he was not the Harkin normal story stereotype.
Yeah. Well, the sort of like kind of woke version of the story, like the.
Well, it's to be very clear. Again, many people in history and in these times were not those things. We're not actually racist. We're not whatever. So like the labeling of woke is just this new word that you know what I mean? Like,
but casually, but like there's almost a sort of like Forrest Gump quality to him, where
I didn't see that at all.
Like where he's just like floating through these awful things.
But the whole movie floats around, right?
Yeah,
like I didn't think of that as a character thing of him. That's just sort of like how we're looking at his life.
Yeah.
And again, because he is a man of little, and again, I feel like it's sort of doing an injustice, but like a man of little consequence in the ways that a history book would write about a person or something like that.
Yeah.
That's sort of apt for the type of story that we're hearing.
Yeah, there's a interesting detail in the book that's like basically a paragraph where it talks about like this idea that he became a layabout, that he was just like a kind of near the, just a general layabout, like didn't really do much with his time, spent it by like fishing by the water until he meets this person who tells him the story of like sexually molesting his niece, the Clifton Collins character. And that's what kind of turns him around a little bit.
To what?
To go out and like find a life, like find something to do. He, up until that moment in the book, he's kind of just like ambling away, fishing, not earning money and not doing anything. And then he decides at that moment, after witnessing that person's death, that he's going to go and try and find a job and find some purpose to life and do something. So I found that fascinating, but I think what I did really latch onto, so instead of the inconsequential man, let's call him the layabout. like let's call him the person who just has no. What I find actually profoundly beautiful about him is that he is generally ambitionless. Like he doesn't have any grand ambitions for like how he is going to shape his life and turn it into something. It was fascinating that just on a purely observational level, Felicity Jones is in this. And the last movie that we saw her in was The Brutalist, where she played again the wife of a man, sort of ambitious man, an ambitious architect in that case. And I kind of I was like a little worried about the typecasting of the role. You know, like in this movie, she plays the sort of like the strong homebody who's there when he returns, you know, kind of thing. And I was like, sure. So but as a sort of poetic small story about a man who does not harbor grand ambitions and who has awful things happen to him through the sort of through seemingly no fault of his own, seemingly. I found that it was a beautiful idea that the most difficult to pin down ideas about how the world works and how the universe works were really beautifully explored in this idea of like the relationship between man and nature. The relationship between like trees, you know, the way that there is an entire system of trees, the sort of idea that he talks about, or I think I got this more from the book, but there is a little bit of it in the film of the wolf girl, you know, like the girl who is raised by animals and who can survive, you know, by animals and in some parts becomes an animal herself. You know, this idea that the interrelationship between human and animal can be interchangeable as well. I found that really beautiful. And just, you know, that final line where he basically comes to the end of his life and he does a flip. It's funny in the book, that is not the end of the book. That is not I mean, he sort of talks about it briefly at that moment, but it's not the
gets up and he's a clicker from The Last of Us.
Yeah, that's what happens. But you know, that he realizes in this sort of moment of joy, in this, you know, like little moment of the roller coaster of gravity falling away between him, of that sense that you get when you fall that far, that he was connected to all things. And I think that's a beautiful idea, is that you know, even the least ambitious, the least of note in history, can be part of this giant ecosystem and important to it. And I found that to be really beautiful and a really beautiful idea within the fabric of the movie. And you know, one that really deeply affected me as a middle-aged dude who has a family, who spends a lot of time thinking about what the fuck is going to go wrong if I don't, you know, like keep an eye out for this moment at this time, you know. Yeah, the movie really, really affected me. You know, a couple of like little details is just from a technical point of view. This is an entirely digital film, so shot entirely on digital cameras, but it's probably one of the best looking digital movies I've ever seen. And really,
you know what camera this was?
I don't know. I'm sure it was like the Sony, the Arri Alexa or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was shot on a 3.2 gate, so it has the full frame as opposed to a 16:9 or a 2.35. And I think that's beautiful because it works into the sort of the era of the photography that this comes from, but also works into like the vertical landscape of the trees that are looking down upon him, you know, and so it doesn't have that sort of expansion, it has that sort of up down feel to it, which I really, really liked. Beautifully graded. I think Joel Edgerton, again, as an actor, I find fascinating because I think he has that sort of Brando-esque quality that I really, really like, which is that he doesn't need to do a lot on screen. Yeah. You know, like he doesn't need to do a lot, and he is endlessly fascinating doing not a hell of a lot. I was listening to the Slash Filmcast where they talked about this, where I think Devendra said something along the lines of like really hard masculine face, but very, very soft, beautiful eyes.
Sure.
And I was like, yeah, that kind of sums it up, you know, like it feels like he could be. And the thing I like about Joel Edgerton as an actor is that it feels like he could play any era. You know, like he could be in a Western, he could be in another
Western,
he could be in a suit and tie, he could be James Bond, he could be, you know, like
third Western,
he could be an action hero. He feels like he could be in a Marvel movie, he could be in whatever, and feel entirely at home in it. You know, he's just got that sort of malleable quality to him that I really, really like. And I think he, you know, his contemporaries from Australia in particular are, you know, like people like Chris Hemsworth, Guy Pearce, Russell Crowe. I think he's closest in kind to Russell Crowe a little bit, particularly LA Confidential Russell Crowe. And I really, you know, I don't want to say this because I admire the quality of filmmakers, but I feel like that's heightened by the fact that he is like a very knowledgeable, experienced director and writer. You know, like he kind of knows how to play the camera. So a lot of this movie just like really, 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 really worked for me on a profound level, and it's the kind of movie I love. I was interested to get, I went back and watched Transpecos, and the thing I was really fascinated by there is that Transpecos feels very similar in kind of execution style and a little bit of tone to John Watts's film Cop Car. John Watts went, and then both those, I think John Watts's film came out a little bit earlier, Cop Car with Kevin Bacon. And the reason I say that is that John Watts then went on to direct all the Spider-Man movies, is directing another Marvel movie now, I believe. I can't remember what. He directed a movie called Wolves with George Clooney and Brad Pitt recently. It is John Watts, right? Who directed Spider-Man.
I believe so.
And it's just fascinating to see these kind of careers in parallel, because Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley have not gone down that road at all. Like there's a sort of fascinating thing that happened with in fact, look, Cop Car came out in 2015. Transpecos came out in 2016. And what happened to Greg Quaidar and Clint Bentley is that they took like something like 11 years between that and their next movie. And there was like all sorts of opportunities that were presented their way, but he kind of, Greg Quaidar kind of, made the decision to really follow Sing Sing. And in the meantime, Clint Bentley went on and did Jockey. And so they have this like beautiful relationship where one writes, one directs, and they flip that script every now and again as well. And I listened to an interview with Clint Bentley, and he, like at some point they were like, this or Ant-Man 4, and like Clint Bentley was like, oh, is that what we're up to now? I have no, I'm not sure. I'm just really interested in movies that like speak to me on an emotional level. And I think that's just a beautiful quality. And these films came out very, very, around the same time, but and had similar successes. And I could see like the qualities that you would look at in Transpecos versus Cop Car would be like very similar qualities, but like they lead to very different outcomes. And I think we are richer for it. Train Dreams is a beautiful movie. It is a shame that Netflix has released it fairly unceremoniously, and it may not be discovered on your feed, or it might be a hard sell on your feed, but that's why we do the podcast. Yeah, that's why we talk about it.
That's kind of a double-edged sword too, right? Because like, is that one that was made and then Netflix bought it?
Yeah, well, it played at Sundance, so...
But Netflix didn't make this movie.
I don't think so. I could be wrong about that. But, Clint Bentley even said himself, like, look, he completely understands, this week, they also released Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, did at the same time. Catherine Bigelow, like, they have Alfonso Cuarón's Roma on there. They have so many great movies, Noah Baumbach. And Clint Bentley said, look, yeah, I'm a proponent for the cinema going experience. I'm a proponent for like going to the movies and seeing things on the big screen and having that communal experience. He said, but the other wonderful thing is that my cinematographer was able to watch this movie in Brazil at the exact same time that I was able to watch it in Los Angeles. And, and we were able to have the same experience, just not together. And, that is the sort of the double-edged sword of Netflix. And I do think, Netflix is a massive organization now with at one time I thought they kind of had like an identity about the things that they made. Now they feel a little bit more all-consuming.
Yeah. They want to be media.
They want to be all media at all times. And I think that's fascinating. I know Apple and Netflix were kind of competing for their first Best Picture win, and Apple got there first with Coda. It feels like Netflix has a lot of opportunity for Oscars this year. But I don't think they're gunning for any of them. I think they're also equally happy with the fact that more people are like just connected to Stranger Things and Squid Games and everything else that they've got on, their slate. And, while you're in there, you can find like an old movie, if you're interested in it. So I don't know what Netflix is at this point, other than like a sort of giant repository of movies.
And shows
and movies and shows
and video games, which is strange.
Video games and like true crime documentaries that you can just throw on when you're feeling like something. And
what a first screen to my second screen experience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've talked a lot Does my feelings about the film influence the way that you felt about it,
No.
or the questions that you were having, or
I mean,
offer you a different perspective on it?
It will definitely offers me a different perspective. I think what it does is sort of solidifies that it is, obviously it is the journey, not a sort of destination. That's kind of what the movie is saying about what could be considered a smaller life. And look, at any scale, any of our lives can be considered small. Like you just adjust the scale of what we're actually talking about, and it really doesn't matter if you're this dude in the woods or the most famous superstar in whatever artistic medium you'd like to be. I think this movie is beautiful because it is more about looking at a specific journey and a person realizing that it is sort of all connected on that journey that we are all on. And I think this movie feels like you dreamt a life. And that's pretty cool. Like not a lot of movies I could say that with a straight face. And this movie feels like it's something out of a dream I had.
Yeah. And in that respect as well, I think, coming into like sort of deeper idea of like what we think about what life means and what have you. This is to me, I've often said that films are my religion. Cinema is my religion. And this is much more, and somebody I was working with pointed this out to me, and they said, they said to me, you speak like you're a religious person. As in you're deeply committed religious person. And I was like, what, only about movies? And they said, yeah, but you sort of believe about life, what movies have taught you, which is that there is all connected, there is a spiritual dimension to the world. And I think, I have thought about that comment a lot, and I think about it a lot, and I probably will think about it a lot until I die, because I'm not a subscriber to any written religious text.
So would like the Criterion Closet be sort of your Mecca?
My church, it'll be visiting the Vatican.
Yeah,
but who wants to like visit the Vatican when you pay for the tour? You want to be invited there as an esteemed guest, right?
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, you're buying shot glasses at the gift shop.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a spiritual dimension to this film, and I'm not prescribing that to a religious quality, but there is a spirituality to this film that is like beautiful. And I think about like, Paul Schrader's book, Transcendentalism in Film, and this idea of like the way this film embodies that, which is that it embodies that transcendentalism, I guess. I'm probably using his book incorrectly here, but like thinking about it, that there is an innate conversation that this film is having about the nature of the relationship between man and nature and naturalism, and like the idea of, what is our place amongst the space that we inhabit, and how much do we damage it, by industrializing it and putting our arms to it. Like that William H. Macy quote, or that character Arendt's quote, which is, like that conversation where he says, from the moment we pick up the axe and put it to the tree, we are in a war with nature, and it takes its toll, even though we may not recognize it. I think that's just this beautiful sentiment that there is this spiritual dimension to this film. And, he's thinking about that. The character is thinking about that himself. He's like, I have done this. I have been part of this horrible tragedy that happened to this man, and it is therefore going to, like the universe is keeping score of this. And I think, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful idea within the sort of confines of the film.
Yeah. The only way this film could have been better is if it ended with Justin Timberlake's "Man of the Woods."
Right. Yeah. There is a Nick Cave song at the end of this, right?
There, I believe.
Yeah, Nick Cave. And I was reading about Nick Cave's tragedy, which is that two of his sons have died, in recent years. And I wondered about how that echoed through the film as well. Maybe not. Yeah, again, not as much as if Justin Timberlake had been like canceling his tour for this movie.
Which tour?
What was the tour?
No, you're so close to doing the joke. Because that's what the cop said. The cop said, which tour or what tour? And he went, the world tour?
I forgot all about that.
Oh, well.
Astounding film. Really beautiful film. Would it, probably likely end up on my top 10 year, without a doubt.
Let's get some 4Ks up.
And just a beautiful looking film. It is a movie designed to be seen on a big screen.
Yeah, I would use that movie in a physical capacity to display what my projector can do.
I don't think there's any. Maybe they did have a theatrical run of the film, but
Netflix has been getting better at physical releases.
Yeah.
So I know they're giving Frankenstein one.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if they'll give this one. This one feels more like Criterion could come in and kind of do it.
Probably.
But I'm actually shocked and happy that Netflix, even down to the Castlevanias, they have physical releases and it's great. So I'm happy.
I have a Criterion of The Irishman and of Roma. So I'm sure it'll end up in that in some way, but just a really beautiful, thoughtful movie about how pointless this all is and how much we're all connected to it.
Or maybe that's the point.
Yeah, connected to the pointlessness of it all.
Yes. Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Train Dreams. Shahir, when you are not training yourself on the dreams of trains, where can folks find you?
You can find me choosing you.
There we go.
At my website, suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are being a large-scale arborist and tearing down all the trees around us so that you can have the biggest gaming room on the planet, where can people find you?
Wow, you can find me making sure that my entire gaming chair is built out of rich mahogany over at my website's Extra Credits and Extra History on YouTube. By the time this comes out, you will have been able to watch the last of our Alexander's Egypt Ptolemy Triumphant series, which is basically the transition from Alexander the Great into the Ptolemaic Empire or Ptolemaic Dynasty. And then, maybe I think the Nintendo Patents episode will be out on Extra Credits. If not, it definitely will be out on Nebula. So you should definitely check that out. If not, speaking of Nebula, if you have a Nebula subscription, you need to go watch The Dinner Plan. You need to go watch Patrick Williams' new film. It is an absolute delight. I'd seen early cuts of it, but the final is really fucking good. So I was super proud of him for that. And please go watch that. If you if you don't have a Nebula subscription, I forget, it's in the link in the description. You can join for a thing. You get the discount code. In December, there is I believe it's the lowest price ever. I think it's actually 50% off instead of the usual 40%. And I think that might be only for the month of December, but don't quote me on that. Didn't mean for that to turn to an ad read. I just, Patrick's movie is really, really fucking good. And if you haven't seen it, join for a month and then bail. I don't know. But yeah, next week.
What do we've got, hopefully we're going to try and see Chloe Zhao's new film, Hamnet.
It's a net of ham.
It is the knit of ham and nothing to do with the Prince of Denmark.
We also know the next couple films that we're doing, right? So it's going to be Hamnet next, then it's going to be Wake Up Dead Man, and then it's going to be Avatar, The Last Airbender, or whatever they're calling it.
Tiny little James
small
Cameron
indie film.
James Cameron and Diva. Yeah, that's the lineup that we've got right now. Again, we are willing to change it at the drop of a hat for any reason.
It's locked.
Yeah, and we will do so. Pray that we don't alter the deal any further.
That's right. Well, until next time, take care of all of your trains and don't let your memes be dreams.
Okay, sure.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.